Marlyn Humphrey, when asked, joined the Owl Falls Fire Department, later becoming the chief. He led the fire department into the service of the community. Firemen who answer the call, no matter what time of day or night or season of the year, doing the things a lot of us don't want to or cannot do. This video is graphic. The contents dealing is with death, but it's the story of a community and the people that serve it. Okay, today we're going to talk here to Marlyn Humphrey. This is the Owl Falls Historical Society, and it's December 2013. And first of all, thank you for sitting down with us.
You're welcome.
Now, you grew up around Owl Falls.
Yes, I did. I grew up south of Owl Falls, a mile west of the airport.
And what did your folks do?
They were farmers.
Okay.
And I was a farmer for a while.
Okay, and then you graduated from high school here?
High school, yeah.
And what year was that?
1952. I joined the fire department in the fall of 1967. I was approached by Assistant Chief Ernest Winters, and they needed drivers and pump operators. And of course, my previous experience was that I had had a milk route, that I hauled milk for several years for the Owl Falls Creamery, and I had driven truck for a long time. So that's what I first started on, was driving truck and being a pump operator. And my first fire was on Park Avenue. I remember it very well because I was shaking so that I couldn't hardly get the clutch in on the truck. And we had a car fire over there, and I was trying to remember all the things that Ernie had told me how to operate the pump, you know, and I got it done. So after that, it just kind of fell in place. And the reason I joined is I never really had thought of it, but Ernie came down and talked to me at the gas station when I was in the DX station. And he said, "Marlyn, we need pump operators and drivers so bad, you know." And he said, "I know you can do it." And I said, "Well, I never even thought of doing this, you know." Well, after I got on in 1968, it just all fell in place, and I loved it.
And how large was the fire department when you got on?
I think there was 26 members when I got on. My number was 25, and Larry Brown was 26. There was 26 members when I got on.
So now when these fire bells or phone calls, or you're eating supper, or you're sleeping, or you're taking a shower, or you're playing with the grandkids, or you got company, when that bell goes off, you go.
We go, regardless. That's right.
And do you ever, like now, sleep at night or thinking, even at nighttime, that thing can go off and you are going?
Yeah.
What goes through your mind when you're laying in bed or you're...
The things that I have to do when I get there. That's the way I was taught by Ernest Winters. Ernie always told me that when you're on the way to the fire, think of what you have to do, especially when you're a truck driver and a pump operator when you get to the fire. And we had American LaFrance fire trucks for many, many years here. And that's the first thing to thought. And then you think about people, are they trapped in the house? That's another thing that you think about, because lots of times calls came in and they'd say fire at certain address, and the people are still in the home. So that was one of our first things when we got there, to make sure that everybody was out of the home.
It's volunteer. So when you go to a fire, you're going basically as one, a fireman, and two, a community server.
That's right. That's the way it first started. And then later down the road, Earl got us $5 a call. And
when they came across and they would say people might still be in the house,
yeah.
Does your heart start pumping?
Your heart starts pumping. Your adrenaline starts running. The minute the bell goes off, your adrenaline is running right now. You're excited, you're ready to go, and you know what you have to do. So and then when somebody's in the house, you have to figure out how you're going to get in there to get them out.
And what goes through your mind when you've had some fatalities,
Right.
and you know they're in there.
Yep.
There's no thought about it whatsoever. We've got people in this house, and there will be fatalities.
Yep.
Can you screen that out as a fireman, or do you just pray to God that it's as few as possible?
Just pray to God that you can get them out. And after this happens, if you do have a fatality, it sticks in your mind for days. It's something that just doesn't leave you. It's just in your conscience all the time about those poor people that got burnt in a fire or were deceased in the fire. And most of the time, a lot of people were just full of smoke, and that's what kills them, is the smoke. The first fire I ever went on was in 1968, I think, and it was down by the country club. There was houses down there, if you remember that. There was 3 homes down there, and we got called in the evening, and I don't recall where I was at, but one of my firemen, Marlyn Reynolds, and I, we went in the fire, and we knew there was a man in there, and we got the fire out, and the house was cluttered up bad, and we dug for several hours to find that body. And that's just something that you see in your mind for days.
And the one day I remember I was coming home, and I can remember it in the back of my mind. It's in there. And I remember who was in your boat. I can remember who was in the other boats. And I drove by Riverbend Rally, and you guys were throwing out these big grappling hooks, looking for a 9-year-old that she had drowned. How can you, I mean, I know people have to do that, but do you turn yourself off on those things, or do you do what you have to do and then deal with it later?
You just do what you have to do and deal with it later. I remember the day that Tony Whitmore and I went out in the boat, and there was a little girl that had fell off of the cliff over by the Baptist Assembly grounds. She was, I don't remember the age.
9.
9 years old, and when I dropped down the grapple, I felt it right away. I mean, you could feel it when you started pulling on it, that it was down on the bottom and there was something on it. And you pull it up, and when you pull it up, it's a horrible feeling. I'll tell you, it gets to you, and especially when it's a small child. And it's just something that you do. I mean, it's just, you get used to it, I guess you might say. Not really used to it, but you get hardened in, that.
We used to have a restaurant that called the 77. And we lost James Harlan in that.
Yep.
What, were you on duty?
Yes, I was on duty, and I lived across the road from Herb Klein. When I came out of my house, there was smoke up on the north end already, and Herb came out and crawled in the car, and away we went. And Herb says, "We got one heck of a fire." So I remember getting in the truck and driving from the fire station after a few guys came and got on the truck, going around and dropping Bud Rice at the Quality Royal corner with a hose. And I guessed where the street was. I had no idea if I was in the center of the street, but I thought I was. And I went down a ways, and I wasn't going fast. I had to go slow. Pretty soon a policeman stepped up on my running board, and he said, "Marlyn, the fire is down around back." So I continued, sent a guy back to tell Bud to bring the hose further down by the Woods Hotel, or Sammy's. There was a hydrant there at Sammy's corner. And I went down and went around and up in the parking lot that's there today. And I parked the truck, and about that time Earl Bailey came up, and there was some guys took the hose, and we put some on the roof of the building, and Earl said, there's somebody in the building, Marlyn, but don't say nothing to anybody. So lo and behold, before I said anything, or before the man that was in the house, his father came up to me, I looked at where the guys were on the roof of that back part of that building, and it was going just like this, and I hollered at Earl and I said, get those guys off the roof, it's going to cave in. They no more than got off, and it caved in. Then the father of the gentleman that was in the fire that was deceased came up to me and he said, Marlyn, do you know if there's anybody in that fire? And I had to fib to him because Earl had told me don't say anything. And I said, I really don't know at this time. And then we had about 7 fire departments come. And this was like 4 o'clock in the morning, if I remember right, somewhere around 4 o'clock. And I stood there for quite some time till we got the fire under control and finally got it out, and which was, oh, I don't even remember, it was quite some time. And then Bob Bacaric and I helped dig for the body, because at that time Earl called Weldon Brothers and they came up with a crane and started digging where we thought the body was at, because we just took a guess at where the apartment was up above. And we was there, Bob Bacaric and I, and the fire marshal was called and he came. Bob and I were there for 36 hours, never got out of our boots, because the fire marshal wouldn't give up. Well, then the crane come and we started digging until we found the body. And I don't remember the exact time of that, but that was my first really, well, not my first, but experience where you had to dig for the body. I had one before that, but it's a horrible, horrible experience.
Well, what goes through your mind when the father wants to know if his son's in there, and you're not positive, but you're pretty sure?
Yeah, it just about got to me, you know. I knew he was in there, and I felt so bad for him, you know, because I knew the boy that was in there. It wasn't a boy, he was a man, but there's just so many things went through my mind about people, about the bodies in those fires. And you know, when I drove down the street, stringing the hose, that I missed a body by about that far that was laying in the street that had passed out, and that was Mrs. Jackson.
She had passed out from the smoke?
She had passed out from the smoke and stuff and was laying in the street. I did not know that. I couldn't see her. You couldn't see nothing.
Because the smoke was so heavy?
The smoke was so heavy, it was unreal. It was clear up in the north end already. You know, I lived up on the college and Siloam at the time. And Herb said to me on the way down, we got one big fire, and boy, we did have one big fire.
The next big fire we had was the Elks.
Yep.
In 1976. And
that was about 8 o'clock at night, and I remember getting down and getting the truck up in position up in front of the Davis paint where the Elks was above. And the first thing that happened was glass blowed out, and one of the firemen got glass, and somebody had to take him to the hospital. And we pumped water up there for I don't know how long until the floor just gave way. There was nobody in there at that time. And it was luck. They had, whoever was running the place, I don't remember, I think it was Bill Granzo. And he told the guys to get out, and they all got out. And when somebody came to Earl and Earl was standing by me at the truck, and said that everybody's out of there. So it lasted a long time after the floor fell, they finally got it out. And then during that fire, my father was in the hospital in bad shape in Rochester, and Earl came to me and he said, "Marlyn, you go see your dad." He said, we'll finish this up." So I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I do remember that one of the guys got hurt. And we had several departments that day. I don't just recall. I think there was 5. Bradford and Buckeye and Alden and Owasso, I think, was the ones that came. And maybe Ackley came too, yeah. So that
If I remember correctly, was it the Elks fire that we about ran out of water?
That's just about right. We just about ran out of water.
From the water tower, just couldn't keep up.
Couldn't keep up, no.
Now, do we, when they have these big fires, you have to know, like each building is supposed to have a firewall.
Yep.
And you also, instead of trying to put out the Elks Club fire, you also have to try to save the buildings next to it.
Yep. And that's the thing that we did. And that was Nisley and Nisley.
Yes.
Was the next building. And then it was the Met Theater. And then you get that, when the roof went out, then all them sparks fly all over. You have to have somebody up on the roof to put them out, because there was all asphalt roofing, you know, on those buildings, because they're all flat tops. And you have to have somebody up on the, we had somebody up on the roof and got the fires out.
Fires we had in this town that was tough was the Bacchus fire.
Yes.
That's where he worked the late shift, went home, fell asleep,
Yep.
and then he died, and 3 of his
4
children,
Yep.
young children.
Yeah, you know, that happened on Easter morning in 1977, and I remember we had been out that evening, and I hadn't been home too long, and I took off down there and got into the truck and drove it, and I knew right away, I said, right away when I seen it, I said, I've got to go down to where the doctor's office used to be, turn around and leave so we could hook to the hydrant and drive back to the fire. And at that time I told the guys, I was in charge because Earl wasn't around, and told the guys to take a 2.5 and hit the fire. Well, they did.
What's a 2.5?
2.5-inch hose.
Okay.
And I sent some guys upstairs, and they came down with a small infant child that was already gone, deceased. And it seemed like that morning that people just came, well, there was all kinds of people, all of a sudden. There was 40, 50, 60 people there. And I said to the policeman, I think Jerry Sunken was the chief of police, I said, get those people out of here. So anyway, we got the fire knocked down, and we got upstairs, and I found the first boy under his bed,